On Thanksgiving Eve, 1971, a man walked onto a commercial airplane, handed over a note, and vanished into American legend. No trace, no body, no confession. 50 years later, the FBI still doesn't know who he was. Neither does anyone else. This is the story of D.B. Cooper, the only unsolved hijacking in the history of American commercial aviation. And by the end of this story, you'll understand why, even decades later, this case still refuses to close. On November 24th, 1971, a calm, well-dressed man walked up to the counter at Portland International Airport. He bought a one-way ticket under the name Dan Cooper, boarding Northwest Orient Flight 305, headed for Seattle. Nothing about him stood out. No nervous glances. No unusual behavior. That was exactly the point. He wanted to be forgettable. He took a seat near the back of the plane, ordered a bourbon and soda, and lit a cigarette. To the passengers around him, he looked like just another businessman flying home for the holiday. None of them had any idea what was about to happen. Shortly after takeoff, Cooper leaned toward a flight attendant named Florence Schaffner and quietly handed her a folded note. She assumed it was a phone number. She was wrong. The note claimed he had a bomb in his briefcase, and he wanted her to sit down next to him. His demands were specific and oddly calm. $200,000 in unmarked $20 bills, 4 parachutes, and no funny business. He said it politely, almost apologetically, as if he regretted the inconvenience. When the plane landed in Seattle, authorities scrambled to meet every demand exactly. All 36 passengers were released unharmed, unaware of how close they'd come to disaster. Cooper kept only the flight crew on board and ordered the plane back into the sky, this time toward Mexico City, flying low and slow, under 3,000 meters, just as he'd instructed. Somewhere over the dense forests of southwest Washington, flying through freezing rain and near total darkness, Cooper did something no one expected. He lowered the plane's rear staircase, mid-flight, and stepped out into the night. He was never seen again. If stories like this keep you hooked, hit subscribe now, because Hidden Origins uncovers a new one every week. Think about that for a moment. Freezing temperatures, 0 visibility, a parachute he'd never tested. No body was ever recovered. No confirmed trace of his landing was ever found. To this day, nobody knows for certain whether he survived the jump at all, or whether the storm simply swallowed him whole. For weeks, search teams combed the freezing forests below the flight path, inch by inch. They found nothing. No parachute, no equipment, no footprints, no sign that anyone had landed there at all. It was as if the man had never existed in the first place. The FBI opened a case they called NORJAC, short for Northwest Hijacking, and it became one of the longest, most exhaustive manhunts in Bureau history. Over 800 suspects were investigated, interviewed, cleared. One by one, every lead went cold. Cooper left behind almost nothing. A few cigarette butts, a single strand of hair, and a black clip-on tie removed and left behind on his seat before he jumped. For decades, that tie sat in an evidence locker, unremarkable. Then, in a later forensic re-examination, scientists found something strange embedded in its fibers. Over 100,000 microscopic metal particles, including rare elements almost never found outside specialized industrial or aerospace environments. Whoever Cooper really was, he may have worked somewhere far more specific than anyone had guessed. Then, in February 1980, nearly 9 years later, an 8-year-old boy named Brian Ingram was digging in the sand along the banks of the Columbia River. He uncovered 3 decaying bundles of cash buried just beneath the surface. When investigators checked the serial numbers, their stomachs dropped. It was Cooper's ransom money. It remains the only physical trace of the money ever found, and instead of solving the mystery, it only deepened it. Why was it there? How did it end up buried on a riverbank, miles from where Cooper was believed to have landed? In 2016, after 45 years of dead ends, the FBI officially closed active investigation into the case. Every credible lead had been exhausted. Yet theories about Cooper's true identity keep surfacing even now, pointing to former paratroopers, disgruntled employees, even one dying man's deathbed confession. None ever confirmed. So, who was he really? An experienced skydiver who vanished into the wilderness with a fortune, quietly living out his life under a new name? Or did the freezing night, the storm, and the fall claim him before he ever touched the ground, his remains lost forever beneath the forest floor? Nobody knows. And that single unanswered question is exactly why, more than 50 years later, DB, Cooper's story refuses to disappear.